There's been a couple events today scattered around the country. I believe there's a celebration of George Floyd's life today in the city of Minneapolis, which one or more of his family members are going to be attending that. There's also, of course, the meeting today between President Bowden and I think 3 members of George Floyd's family, including his sister, his mother, and his grandmother. So they're meeting with the president today to speak about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which is currently stuck in the Senate. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening this week. There's I believe, a march in New York City that George Floyd's brother hosted. So there's a lot of movement happening in the activism sphere right now, coinciding with the first anniversary of George's death. And it's really sort of this renewed push by this activist sphere to get the George Floyd Act through the Senate and get it to Biden's desk before ideally the end of the fall. The fight appears to be, for the most part, centered around issues like qualified immunity, which is the legal protection that shields individual police officers and often also police departments as a whole from legal action resulting from cases surrounding use of force or deaths in the case of George Floyd's family. Republicans are very wary about getting rid of those protections, particularly for individual officers. Democrats are more looking at that as one of their key goals because they believe it's one of the reasons that bad cops stay on the force. So there is a lot of contention in the Senate right now as to whether there will be enough Republicans who will compromise on enough Democratic priorities to both get a bill through the Senate, but also get a bill through the Senate that activists feel is actually meaningful.
Well, I mean, it wasn't surprising that a larger percentage of Americans think that things are worse today than say they were a year ago or 2 years ago. For a lot of Americans, they are having this racial awakening. They are becoming woke, if you will, to what's been happening oftentimes to Black people and brown people in low-income communities, but not always. I mean, and we've seen this go across different types of communities, being in urban areas, rural areas, as well as suburban areas. So part of thinking through that is that racism isn't really getting worse, it's getting filmed. So for a lot of people, they haven't seen it that way. And based on our kind of colorblind ideology that we've employed over the past, say, quarter century or so, particularly with the election of former President Barack Obama, a lot of people are shocked and dismayed by what they are seeing. And they find it problematic that they have to now question the reports that police officers put out and question the behavior of law enforcement, because to a lot of people growing up in America, police officers are our heroes. So to see that fall is, I think, difficult for people regardless of what your political orientation is or your race. Well, I think what we're going to see across the country is a memorial if you will, not just for George Floyd, but for others who have been killed by police. And we have to remember that from the start to the end of the Derek Chauvin trial, where he was convicted of murder of George Floyd, over 60 people were killed by police. And I think that's something that people find disheartening. I think what we should be focusing on is not just police reform, because I'm unsure if that word is the word that we should use anymore. We've been trying to do police reform for decades. It's clear it hasn't worked. Instead, we have to transform, we have to reimagine, we have to rebuild in the way that maybe even that Camden has done with this police department. So the focus should be on police reform, particularly at the federal level. Cities and states have actually done a lot. There are over 30 states that have passed some type of legislation on police reform, low-hanging fruit things that honestly, in the work that I do, I don't think that it will move the needle as much as people think, but things around de-escalation training, around duty to intervene and report, those particular things, no-knock warrants. But at the federal level, the big thing is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and obviously dealing with qualified immunity. President Biden asked for Congress, the Senate to be specific about it, to address and pass police reform. That hasn't happened yet at this 1 year mark. That was the date that he set. And honestly, for a lot of Black Americans, while they are appreciative and applauding executive orders and legislation around housing discrimination and anti-Asian hate and the anti-Asian hate crime, and also reflections on how we restore trust in science, they are still on the outside looking in, saying that once again, we got Democrats, the presidency, as well as the Senate. And here we are well over 100 days and still haven't seen the main thing that we've been asking for, which is police reform.